Hello. The Divine Code for February 10th, pages 495 and 496. We are in the chapter, The Prohibition of Relations with Other Men's Wives. Topic number 3. Cohabitation by Gentile partners can bring the consummation of marriage bond only if it is done in the normal way. If the relations were done in an abnormal way, the woman is not considered married, and if she later had normal relations with another man, the transgression of adultery would not apply, and there would be no liability of the partners for capital sin. So there's a very specific definition as to what is considered a marriage bond, and that's basically the purpose of this topic, is to go into the details of that requirements of what is considered a marriage bond, and therefore what would be a situation where adultery would be a concern. Because outside of the marriage bond, then there would not be adultery. It would be licentiousness, but it would not be adultery. And we have a long footnote just going into this. Parshas Devorim, page 10, Rikva Kedushim, 9 on 9, page 9b, Penei Yehoshua Kedushim, 13b, and Kidskuni on Genesis 38, 7 and 26. Minhat Kino, Commandment 35, Section 8, Section 16, writes an opinion that a Gentile man can acquire a woman in marriage through cohabitation, even in an abnormal way, and that abnormal intercourse would also consummate her status as a fully married woman, as is written by Ritva and Parshas Vayeshev. Indeed, the general opinion of Minchat Kinuk is in accordance with the opinion of the Jerusalem Talmud, Tractate Kedushim, at the beginning of chapter 1, that a Gentile man acquires a wife through the act of intercourse. And according to the Jerusalem Talmud, it is but not accepted as the practical Torah law. He has no way to divorce her. It is also the opinion of Rashi on Tractate Sanhedrin 57b, according to the sin of A, the invading enemy Gentile soldier who kidnaps and cohabits with a local married woman, and B, a Gentile master who specifies his slave woman for his slave man, and then he, the master, cohabitates with her. Rashi says that the transgression in each case is that the man is stealing a woman who is already acquired by another man. The author argues that even according to the Jerusalem Talmud and Rashi, who have the opinion that acquisition of the wife happens through marriage by normal relations, it is logical that they would agree that abnormal cohabitation does not establish a marriage bond, about which Genesis 12:24 expressly states, and he cling to his wife. So according to a large number of rabbinic sources and the Jerusalem Talmud, respected rabbinic sources, a man acquires his wife That means acquire. It doesn't mean acquiring it like a slave. It means there's an he acquires the marital status of the wife. Before the marriage, the marital status belonged to her, or maybe belonged to her father. Her marital status. Now the marital status belongs to the husband, and if somebody else violates that marital status, he is stealing the marital status from the husband. And that's the way it's understood within Jewish law, and many of these rabbinic authorities take the Jewish law and apply it to the non-Jewish understanding of what's being violated in the case of adultery. What is the specific violation? So many of the rabbinic sources state that what's being violated is the fact that the husband acquired his wife, and therefore violating that acquisition, it would be in the a form of stealing, and that would be adultery. But it would also be a form of stealing. However, it is clear from Rambam's words that his opinion runs counter to this. So we just had a long paragraph discussing a variety of rabbinic understanding regarding this being the husband acquiring his wife, and now the divine code is going to bring another opinion that would state something else. And then, from what I understand, the divine code is going to accept the second opinion. It is clear from the Rambam's words that his opinion runs counter to this, as he says in the Laws of Marriage 1:1. Before the Torah was given, when a man would meet a woman and he would desire to marry, he would bring her to his home, conduct relations in private, and thus make her his wife. Once the Torah was given, only the Jews were commanded that when a man desires to marry a woman, he must acquire her as a wife through the formal contractual agreement in the presence of witnesses. So in the Rambam's understanding was that the man would bring the woman into his house, have relations with her, marital relations with her, and through that they would be married. He would make her his wife. And after the Torah was given, or when the Torah was given at Sinai, the Jewish people received a extra requirement that there be a formal marital contract, what we consider the marital ceremony, the marriage ceremony, where the person says, you take this woman to be your wife, you take the man to be your husband. That's a formal religious ceremony, but it's a contract, and the contract is sealed with the giving of the ring, by which, in the Jewish understanding, the giving something of value is a symbolic manner that causes the woman to be acquired by the man. But this has to be done, this contractual aspect of this in the Jewish law has to be done in public in front of witnesses. That's the wedding ceremony. By Torah law, a Jew can acquire his Jewish wife by either marital relations, or by a traditional written contract, or by giving her something of value. The sages prohibited Jewish marriage by intercourse. Tractate Kedushin 12a. So there's the three ways that within Jewish law a man would acquire a wife. And the sages in the time of the Talmud stated, okay, we're not going to consider marital relations to be the manner of acquisition. Now, within the Jewish law, that's still an important thing. It's an important aspect. The consummation of marriage is still important, but it's not the way that the woman is considered acquired by the man. So apparently, it would be the way within Jewish law, a woman would be acquired by the man through marital relations, except the sages said, no, we're not going to do it that way. We're going to use either the giving something of value, such as a ring, or the vows, the contract that is done in public. This acquisition specified in the Torah law for Jews does not mean that the husband owns his wife, but rather with her consent he acquires all her personal financial aspects and income she may earn during their marriage, with the exception of any of her assets that she specifically excluded from the acquisition of by premarital agreement. So within Jewish law, what's being acquired is all the woman's assets, except for anything she may have said otherwise. And within the Jewish law, there's also within the contract requirement in the case of divorce, what the woman would receive from the man. So they have like a prenuptial agreement both on what the woman does not make common property of. You know, she keeps some assets for herself, and what would be given to her in the event of divorce. So all that's part of the contract. This implies that in the law for Gentiles, there is no automatic acquisition of the wife when the marriage is consummated through normal relations, and B, the acquisition agreement is not necessarily for the marriage, and C, an acquisition is never part of the essential marital bond. So similar to the sages determining that marital relations is not the way that a Jew acquires his wife, within Noahide law, within non-Jewish law, the marital relations is the way that the woman becomes the man's wife through the marital relations. But it does not mean that she is acquired, that she's financially acquired by the husband as a piece of, as property. That's not a factor according to the Rambam. Now we have all these other very respected rabbis who are saying that the woman is acquired by the man, but the divine code's going with the Rambam. It is also clear from Rambam, Laws of Kings 9:8, which says, counter to the Jerusalem Talmud and the other sources, that a married Gentile can divorce and does not inherently require a divorce proceeding or a divorce document in order to dissolve his or her marital bond. Rather, it will be dissolved if at least one partner desists from the marital bond and the woman leaves or is sent away from the husband's domain, or he leaves her domain, and she goes on her own independently. More details of Gentile divorce are presented in chapter 4. This demonstrates that according to Rambam, there is no acquisition of the wife in a Gentile marriage, because if there were an acquisition, the woman would not have the right to leave the marriage without the husband's consent. So the way the Rambam understands it is that in the case of a divorce, the man and woman simply separate from each other, and that's considered divorce. And there's no financial or property issues involved. They just simply leave each other. Now, how they handle the, who gets the family pets, I I'm not sure how that's handled here. Maybe it goes into more of that in chapter 4, which discusses divorce. It is clear to the author that the actual Torah law for Gentiles follows Rambam's opinion that Gentiles do not have acquisition of wives through marriage. That is, marriage of itself does not transfer any special economic rights from the wife to the husband. Rather, consummation of the marriage through normal cohabitation with the intention only accomplishes the marriage bond itself, as it says, and cling to his wife. Just as this act of requirement makes one liable for adultery, it is likewise required for attaining the Torah status of marriage. So the idea of what the divine code is going with, and with the Rambam's opinion, is because the verse that the non-Jewish, the Gentiles' understanding of marriage comes from the verse, it says, and cling to his wife. And therefore that statement, and cling to his wife, which is a reference to marital relations, is what the divine code is putting everything on that. And the clinging to the wife, not really defining, the clinging to the wife is what the husband does with the wife. Whether or not that is the essence of the marriage, apparently the other opinions would say that's not the essence of the marriage. That's an aspect of the marriage. The man does this. He clings to his wife, but that's not what makes her his wife. And the divine code is saying that, yes, that is what makes her his wife, is that they make this understanding amongst each other. They're going to be living together as they're living together as a husband and wife, and the act of marital relations is what makes that a marriage. The act of normal intercourse happens when at least the full. Okay, so now we're going into the very specific aspect of what marital relations is, and in order to put everything into in order to make everything necessary, instead of saying that this is something that partners do, and therefore you wouldn't have to go into detail of what they do, but because this is the actual mechanism by which the marriage occurs. And it's also it's also very important to understanding what adultery is, because adultery would be a mimicking of this with outside of the marriage bond. Another man doing this with the wife would be adultery. And this is specifically what the action that makes the marriage. The act of normal intercourse happens when at least the full head of the male organ is inserted into the woman's vagina. Jerusalem Talmud, Tractate Kedushim 1:1. This appears simple, since in Genesis 23, the use of bilut, biulot bal is specifically Gentile marriage refers to the sexual act of marital relations. In Torah law, the initial stage of the act, the insertion of the head of the male organ is sufficient to be considered intercourse in regard to giving a woman the status of marriage. For consummation of the marriage bond, this must be done with both partners intending to become bond in marriage with their free consent. This excludes relations that are merely promiscuous. So they both have to be doing this with the intention of marriage. If one person intends marriage, the other person does not intend marriage, then it's not a marriage activity. And if neither one considers they're doing this for the sake of marriage, then it's also not considered married. It's not, people having relations with each other does not make the person married. It's when they do it with the will, with the desire to become married. This is the simple meaning of Rambam, Laws of Marriage 1:1, as explained in Maggid Mishnah and Kriyat Sefer there, and Responsa of Ritva, chapter 398. It is also clear from the law of one who cohabits with his wife who was seduced by his father, who is not considered his father's wife, since their cohabitation was not done with the marriage in mind, as explained in topic 3:1. So within Jewish law, any woman who is a wife of a father. So if the father has multiple wives, either at the same time or one and then another and another, any wife, even if it's not the mother, would be prohibited to a son. However, if the father had promiscuous relations with a woman, that would not exclude her from the son. So we see from that the relations by themselves do not make the marriage bond. It's the relation. It's the intention of both partners in unison when they're having the marital relations. And we just described what marital relations specifically means. Thank you.